Alien is a 1979 science fiction horror film directed by Ridley Scott and written by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. It's widely known as the movie in which all sexual analyses have some basis, as the filmmakers deliberately went for all sorts of sexual imagery just to make people uncomfortable.
The whole thing was supposed to be about the sexual life cycle of an alien. One thing that people are all disturbed about is sex. Everybody is always all in a knot about sex. I said, that's how I'm going to attack the audience. I'm going to attack them sexually.
If that sounds rapey to you, there's good reason. As a natural effect of combining sex and horror, there is a major theme about rape, which I'll be discussing extensively. If this disturbs anyone, turn back now. The fact that Sigourney Weaver's character Ripley plays a big role in opposing a monster that symbolizes rape has led Alien to be labeled as the first feminist horror film, and Ripley as the first feminist action star. Though I find the claims themselves erroneous, The Stepford Wives was a feminist horror film in 1975, Princess Leia was a feminist action hero in 1977, it cannot be ignored that Alien has a significant presence as a feminist film and deserves some analysis.
Spoilers!
It starts in space, with the freighter Nostromo returning home to Earth, towing a refinery with mined mineral ore. Alien has a general socialist theme, with the disliked rich bosses back on Earth, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and a focus on working-class citizens whom the filmmakers characterize as space truckers. Before anything happens, we get a sense of the tight, claustrophobic Nostromo environment that is a clear rip-off of the Pillar of Autumn from Halo. Seriously though, this film's all about atmosphere. The highly advanced text-based computers spring to life, and the space truckers wake up from hypersleep early. Ridley Scott describes them as like babies sleeping in bassinets. It's generally accepted that the Nostromo represents a safe home environment in contrast to the terrifying outer world. Horror filmmaker John Carpenter has described horror fiction as divided into two categories. The evil is out there, and the evil is in here. Alien has a lot of focus on the first kind of horror, literally fearing the alien. In order to do that, there's a long time spent building up the contrasting environments of the home and the alien. They get breakfast. We see a reasonable amount of diversity in the crew. Warrant Officer Ripley and Navigator Lambert are two women in a crew of 7. Chief Engineer Parker is African American, and, though the only person of color on board, his character escapes the standard racist treatment of a usual black character in a horror film. Additionally, though not of a marginalized group, it's worth noting that Science Officer Ash is British in a crew of Americans. This diversity was chosen very deliberately to make Alien stand out from other science fiction films by expressing the optimistic idea that separate types of people would come together in the future. This is also seen in the name Weyland-Yutani, combining British and Japanese industrial powers. Anyway, these early scenes show us the basic natures of these characters. Captain Dallas is in charge, but he's relaxed and one of the people. Ripley and Ash both exude confidence and seem like they might be gunning for Dallas's position. Ripley specifically coming across as a bit of a control freak. Lambert and Executive Officer Kane are nice, relatively easygoing people for the audience to empathize with especially. Parker and his assistant, engineering technician Brett, are the rough workers, and they get a kick out of annoying management like Ripley. There's also a cat named Jones.
Have you ever considered training this cat?
The crew are confused why they don't see Earth in their vicinity. Captain Dallas consults Mother, the ship's computer. Mother's server room is sometimes interpreted as a comforting womb, though I think it's more of a brain, and Mother herself is a loving caretaker of the Nostromo crew. Such interpretations are all thematic, though, as Mother herself is without personality. Though the crew regard Mother as if an intelligent woman, as far as I can tell, this is just an anthropomorphization of a background process that runs the ship, on the order of a pilot regarding their plane as a loyal friend, when it's actually just a piece of machinery. Mother says that they've stopped because the Nostromo picked up a distress signal, and protocols require them to attempt a rescue mission.
Can't stop the signal.
What confuses the crew is that it might actually be of non-human origin. Nevertheless, protocols are protocols, so they set down in the harsh primordial environment of alien moon LV-426 to see what aid they can provide.
It's Christmas tree lights.
A harsh dust storm causes them some damage, so Parker and Brett work on repairs, while Dallas, Kane, and Lambert put on suits and investigate the signal, and Ash and Ripley monitor. Ash seems quite excited about the mission, while Ripley is highly pessimistic. She examines the signal and concludes that it's more likely to be a warning signal than a distress signal,
There's the truth of the signal.
and she wants to chase after them, but Ash reasons that they put too much distance between them for that to do any good, that the team will encounter any danger on their own and have to deal with it themselves. Ripley agrees to stay put. Meanwhile, the landing party investigates the derelict alien ship. Here we start to really see designer H.R. Giger's creepy sexual imagery. The openings to the ship are basically vaginas. The inside of the ship is very organic, like it's the inside of an animal, with the walls made from bone and flesh shapes. Its bridge has a large chair with a very phallic protrusion, in which sits the fossilized remains of an alien pilot, nicknamed the Space Jockey by a storyboard artist, which would later be officially named an engineer by the prequel movie Prometheus in 2012. The alien remains have a big hole in the chest cavity, which appears to have been made by an explosive force in the inside. They discover a giant chamber that's basically the derelict ship's womb, and they lure Kane inside. He discovers a pit containing hundreds of alien eggs, and his presence causes one to hatch. Instead of the shell being broken apart, the top part peels back in a manner that is supposed to evoke the opening vagina. This was originally much more overt, with 2 sides instead of 4, but studio executives made Giger dial it down a bit because they were afraid of the film not being shown in Catholic countries. As Kane peers in, the alien child springs out and latches onto his face. Dallas and Lambert rush Kane with the alien on his face back to the Nostromo and tell Ripley to open the door. Ripley hears that there's this unknown animal that they want to take on board and refuses because of containment protocols. Dallas tries to pull rank and Lambert begs her to help their friend, but she says her hands are tied because of protocols. Ash breaks the rules to open the door, and he escorts Kane to the medical chambers. While Ripley is technically doing the right thing insofar as monster movies go, and she says she's looking out for the good of the crew as a whole, she comes across as very cold and inhuman. Though it's common knowledge at this point that Ripley is the main protagonist of the Alien series, when people first watched this film in the theaters, they saw her as just one character in a cast of 7. Taking this film on its own, we expect her to be the first victim, and her death to be celebrated, because a lot of American horror movies follow a sin and punishment dynamic. In the 2003 director's cut, Lambert even smacks Ripley across the face in an expression of the audience's anger. Though Alien went to some efforts to treat its characters as gender neutral, part of the reason that we react to Ripley negatively is because she's a woman and seen as more domineering when she exercises power than Dallas or Ash. Lambert striking her is cathartic, though it is worth noting that everyone around her reacts with alarm, partly because the director told Veronica Cartwright to actually strike Sigourney Weaver to make it authentic and hadn't told anybody else. Meanwhile, Dallas and Ash examine Kane and the alien. Kane is unconscious, while the alien, called the Face Hugger, keeps itself tightly pressed to his face.
Hence the name.
Ash determines that the Face Hugger keeps him alive by pumping air into his lungs via a proboscis shoved down his throat. Dan O'Bannon describes this imagery evoking homosexual oral rape.
I'm going to attack them sexually. And I'm not going to go after the women in the audience. I'm going to attack the men. And I'm going to put in every image I can think of that I know will make the men in the audience cross their legs. Homosexual oral rape.
This plays with gender issues in a way feminists can find intriguing. Men are made as vulnerable as women usually are to a rapist figure. On the other hand, it also functions on homophobia and a demonization of gay men. While the aliens are technically androgynous, the phallic characteristics are the ones actively used in attacking and creating the rape imagery, producing an antagonist masculine in its aggression. The plot isn't very sensitive to the gay community. Against Ash's better judgment, Dallas orders Ash to cut the facehugger off of Kane. They try to, but one cut releases a splash of intense acid blood that threatens to eat through the hull of the ship, but fortunately stops a few decks down. Freaked out, they decide not to continue removing the creature. Ridley Scott describes this as the moment when the crew starts to view themselves as a group and looking out for each other's interests instead of just themselves. Ripley gives Ash a talk about how he should have deferred to her when she was left in charge of the ship. She says Ash broke the biggest rule there is, while he defends his actions by saying that they were to save a friend. She comes off as an oppressive authoritarian, just caring about power and by-the-book procedures, while Ash is the compassionate human being. At this point, we're waiting for the satisfaction of seeing her die. Not too long after that, Ash calls Dallas to the infirmary, and he brings Ripley with him. The facehugger has mysteriously disappeared. They cautiously look for it, and we see Ripley show concern for someone else for the first time, when it's Dallas putting himself in danger. This is because Dallas and Ripley were at one point supposed to have been a couple. Sigourney Weaver's screen test was actually a romantic scene between the two of them. They later decided to make everybody relatively independent. I think that this was an improvement. Ripley is more set up as a red herring red shirt. Audiences would probably be able to empathize with Dallas and care about her through him. From a feminist perspective, there's more of an impact when Ripley is the independent woman holding her own in a dangerous world. Though female characters can be in relationships without being anti-feminist, it's easier for this to be done now in the era of third-wave feminism than then during second-wave feminism. The facehugger falls on Ripley, but it's dead. Ash examines it. Ripley doesn't like it and wants Ash to get rid of it. Ash says that he doesn't think it's a zombie. He comes across as the reasonable scientist, while Ripley is irrational and overly reliant on her emotions. That is a common idea brought up as to why women would be unsuited to command, and its usage here further draws the audience into think that Ash is the good leader, while Ripley is the bad leader. Though she is wrong in this instance, the dead facehugger doesn't do anything, this conflict between her and Ash will swing in her favor by the end. Ripley confronts Dallas to try to get him to stop Ash. Dallas says he trusts him even though Ripley doesn't. Ripley speaks with warmth that makes sense when they're a couple, and this helps us to keep us from fully hating her. She still comes across as an annoying authority figure, but she has a realistic range of emotion. All of the characters have that nice verisimilitude that makes Alien more than just a flashy science fiction movie like Prometheus. Ripley wants to continue repairs, but they can take off at this point, so Dallas has them leave the moon to resume their trip home. They chat in the dining area about their next actions. I like that the women are taken as seriously as the men, even if we don't like Ripley yet. Lambert makes calculations and she is assumed to be as capable as anyone. Ash interrupts their meeting to ask Dallas to see Kane. They all come to see him. He's awake and seemingly fine after the alien attack. Before getting back into hypersleep, they decide to have a congratulatory meal. This is the most famous scene of Alien, a jarring shift into horror as Kane starts convulsing and bleeding from the mouth. People try to help him, but they don't know what's wrong with him and can only hold him down. Blood sprays from his chest as another alien bursts out of him, called the chest burster.
Hence the name.
The chest burster is very phallic in shape, and its shocking sexual nature calls to mind the raping alien of the initial attack, now understood to be a literal rape in which the facehugger implanted its offspring inside Kane to gestate. The scene is essentially a violent birth scene involving a pregnant man. The alien raped Kane, and he now gives birth to his rapist child. It portrays masculine vulnerability in a way usually reserved for women. Dan O'Bannon intended to use this to terrify male audiences.
Homosexual oral rape. Birth. The thing lays its eggs down your throat. The whole number.
But it actually freaked out female audiences a great deal more. I would speculate that women are socialized to be empathetic to that sort of thing with other women, and it's jarring to see a man suffer in that way when men are supposed to be safe from that sort of thing. The chest burster examines the room and then slithers away very quickly. The crew are left shaken.
What the fuck was that?
They have a quick funeral for Kane and then deal with the threat. They can't go to sleep when there's a dangerous alien on board, so they decide to catch it and then throw it out the airlock. Brett supplies cattle prods, and Ash makes motion detectors. They decide to split into two groups to track down the thing. Ripley, Parker, and Brett pick up a small target and lunge for it, but Brett realizes that it's the cat and lets it go. Of course, now the cat will get in the way again, so Parker and Ripley make Brett go retrieve it.
I have taken your suggestion. I have begun training her. How's it going? I have not been entirely successful.
He wanders through the ship following the cat, and he finds the shed skin of the chest burster, meaning that it's grown beyond what it was to what is called the drone form. He gets to the cat, but the man-sized drone gets him while the cat watches in fear. The drone reveals its very sexual appearance. The head is shaped like a giant penis. The mouth drips slime like an aroused vagina dentata, and the second mouth is like another penis. This metaphorical penis beats him to death, making this a rape metaphor to go along with the literal rape of Kane. Both male and female sex organ imagery are used together to make the monster's appearance unsettling, which isn't the most friendly thing in the world to the transgender people. The androgyny aside, only the phallic part is used in the attack, continuing the heterosexual male fear of being raped by a man. They very easily could have mixed it up and had someone's head get bitten off by the vagina dentata, but they chose to make the alien a masculine rapist figure, especially with the omission of a later scene featuring characters consumed by the vaginal eggs.